Hi everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Wonderful episode today. Hey, we're on the other side of 400. Crazy. And what a great episode today. This is Solomon Georgio. If you don't know who Solomon is, why don't I read you his bio right now? Born in a refugee camp in Sudan, comedian and TV writer Solomon Georgio immigrated to the U.S. at a young age, and his family eventually ended up in Seattle. As a stand-up, he's performed on Conan, This Is Not Happening, Viceland's show Flophouse, The Meltdown, Two Dope Queens on HBO, and his own Comedy Central Stand-Up Presents special. As a TV writer, he's written for a ton of shows, including SpongeBob SquarePants, Adam Ruins Everything, Crashing, and the upcoming reboot of High Fidelity. Solomon's first stand-up album, Homo Negro Superior, was released in 2017 on Comedy Central Records. I've seen Solomon perform a bunch of times and thought he was wonderful. And we were talking, I say this in the episode, but we were talking at a stand-up show here in Los Angeles about a year ago. And he was saying something about his family that I thought was fascinating. And so I'm like, I've always wanted to have him on since then. And we get into it. Solomon's a very open person. We talk about his family immigrating to the U.S. and what his parents' life was like in Ethiopia and then in a refugee camp in Sudan and a lot of other cool things. I don't know about cool. A lot of other fascinating things. How's that? I don't know if we're talking about, like, you know, dealing with your parents' ignorance is cool, necessarily. But fascinating? Sure. So I hope you like this episode. Hey, by the way, if you are new to Beginnings and you do like the episode, why not check out some other episodes of the show? I've talked to tons of people, comedians, performers, writers, authors, artists. Let's see here. If you go to your podcast app, the last 100 episodes should be there. If you go to Spotify or beginnings.libsyn.com, every episode back to episode 1 is there. And let's see here. Can I recommend something for you? Solomon wrote on Crashing, why I've talked to both Pete Holmes, and Jamie Lee, who's on the show very early on. I think I talked to them back when I had a co-host, which is like 8 years ago. Who else might be of interest? Oh, you know what? Solomon was on Two Dope Queens. Phoebe's been on the show before. Amy Aniobi, who was the head writer for the HBO show, was on the show. They were both very cool. So check out those episodes. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. And stay tuned for some more great episodes coming up. But for now, here's Solomon. It's amazing to me as a middle-class Pennsylvanian Jew coming to this. And I'm like, oh, I thought I would have, you know, I have a master's degree in philosophy. I thought I would have like certain kinds of like educational advantages that no, if I didn't go to Ivy League, it doesn't. If I didn't go specifically, if I didn't write for the Harvard Lampoon specifically,
then getting into the writing game is just oh God, it's not easy at all.
Did you find it easier coming from stand-up? Because I know Naomi got offered opportunities from being a great stand-up.
Everything has been stemmed from stand-up. However, my first writing job was based on just pure luck. Because my neighbor, he's a great guy. He's a producer. He produced on South Park. And he just lives way beneath his means, owns a home next to me. And he just was one season of SpongeBob, they were like, well, we wanted to do a writer's room this time because they just been storyboarding every story, and they're like, well, let's bring in some different fresh ideas. And then he was like, okay, great. And he just came up to us one day after he drove. He was like, yeah, I'm going to start working on the next season of SpongeBob. Do you guys want to write on it? And we're all just sitting on our porch.
This fucking...
Like, yeah, sure, whatever, crazy dude. And then we legitimately all got emails the next day from Nickelodeon, like me and my roommates, and we're like, okay.
I mean, not that you're not a great stand-up. It's more the like the idea, the thing that always that claws at my soul is how devalued writing is, in the sense that like you could like, oh, my neighbors, I'll just check in with them and see what they're doing.
Well, to be fair, he knew who we are, and it's not like he was like, like he didn't just go to whichever neighbor he saw first.
Like his other neighbors on the other side is an electrician.
It's like,
just like, hey, I know
you want to come in and write?
Your trade degree.
No, he knew we were all comedians. We were there for a few years when he got the job, and then he just was like, hey, I know you guys have the skill set. Do you want to prove it? And we're like, sure. And yeah.
It's the thing that's very, that makes this city a little difficult because of that kind of thing, because of the like idea of like Schwab's or something, like you can just be plucked out of obscurity.
Yeah.
It makes everyone thirsty in some way, even if you don't want to be. Like, I know in the back of my head, if I'm talking to someone who could do something for my career, even if I'm trying to just like, I'm trying to avoid talking about any kind of career stuff at all because I don't want to have that conversation in general, there's still this like little voice in the back of my head that's like thirsty. That's like a little like demon just like salivating.
Let me tell you. No, I've been in those situations too where I'm like, oh, you just got this and this. Especially when I first moved here, I'm like, who do I got to talk to, and like, where do I have to be? And like eventually that kind of like tampered down eventually, because like it felt like it was leading nowhere for so long, and I just like, just focus on stand up. That's the best you can do right now. And it just, it was like, it was what benefited me in the long run was setting up these relationships where people knew what I'm capable of. And it just took them years to finally give me a job where I can do it.
But did you set up those you didn't set them up consciously. Like there's a kind of like, I meet a kind of person out here who is, if not sociopathic, certainly on that scale. And either they're like sloppy sociopaths, or they are kind of like, I'm lining up my ducks in a row because I know I will need this person in a year from now or whatever. Like, maybe they don't have an exact time frame on it. And that's the kind of stuff, like having that kind of voice in the back, like there's like a sociopath in the back of my head that I have to like keep in a cage.
I feel it but for me, I've never intentionally networked. Like networking is something I despise. Like the whole idea of doing like journal meetings and all that kind of like, it's just like, fuck, why do we have to play this game? Like, we don't know each other. You made me drive all the way to Santa Monica at 3:00 during rush hour.
That's why you got to do all the Santa Monica ones at 11 a.m.
Oh yeah, they never set them up that time. But like I think the benefit is always just setting up relationships with people, just because as friends, and over time. Because like that's what happened. It was like my other writing jobs were based on setting up a relationship with another, like a fellow comic, and it had nothing to do with my writing. And then once they had work and they needed a writing staff, then my name came up, and that's what happened with Adam Ruins Everything. Like he's familiar with me, the work I did, and then eventually was like, hey.
But but to do this in some way, you have to be driven, right? No.
Well,
what? Okay, I was, because what I wanted to ask was like, whatever the way you approach this kind of slime pit that is this town. I was trying to think about like how you grew up, and I don't know like all the facts of that stuff, but I'm like wondering like where. If there's like a continuum for like how you felt when you were when you were a child, when you were a teenager, into like how you approach this stuff now?
Well, growing up, because like my family were immigrants, African immigrants, so when I was like an insanely overachieving, because I was a closeted gay kid, which is a great way to be an overachiever. Like, don't pay attention to the thing of me not dating anyone.
It's like a magician, right? You're like, here's the card.
Report card. Yeah. Like, you got to do anything to like get them to focus on something else, and so like I see other people seeing me as driven and hardworking, but in comparison to what I used to be, especially in school, like this is far lazier.
Yeah. Do you still have I still have the thing though where I'm waiting for the pats on the head for those kind of intellectual achievements, where I'm like, I do want a report. I want my agent to give me a report card that says like I did well pitching or whatever, so that I can show my parents.
See, I want, I like when I intimidate someone to the point they feel stupid when they're not. That is, it's a mean thing to do. But man, I fucking love it. When you can convince somebody somebody just as smart as you that they're dumber, it's like, oh God, here we are. Like I've done it a few times where I'm like, I've taken a few accomplished people where they're like, I think he's smarter than me. I'm like, I know I'm not, but go ahead, believe that, please. No, I like using intelligence as a weapon. Whatever piece of knowledge I can do to dehumanize another person, I'll do it.
I was reading up on. I knew a little bit about Ethiopia just because if you're Jewish in the 80s, you knew about like Ethiopian
Beta
Jews.
Israel,
yeah. But I had no idea. Stupidly. Well, again, in America, you're like taught like nothing about any other country, really. I mean, maybe a little bit about Europe, but like that there was a kind of like, I was about to say Marxist takeover, but really like it was
a communist dictator.
Communist dictatorship that kind of just like fucked everything over. And I knew like Haile Selassie. I actually had no idea anything about him besides his connection with Rastafarianism.
Well, he's Ja Rastafari.
Yeah.
He is Rastafari. He was the last emperor, and that's actually that's why my parents fled to Sudan, where I was born, because of the communist dictator. And also it was a three-way war, because there was a civil war within the country.
Right.
And then there was also Sudan, Eritrea, the country next to us.
Didn't Sudan attack also at some point?
No, Sudan was where all the refugees went. I don't think we had any issue with Sudan for a while that I'm aware of.
I can't believe my memory of a Wikipedia article has steered me wrong.
Look, I can also not be 100% correct. I will happily be, if anyone's like, that's not what happens, I'm like, tight, cool. Yeah, you're right.
The minute you said you use intelligence as a weapon, I'm now like, shit, I better have all my facts straight.
No. That's only if I view you as a threat.
Wait.
Now you see it. That's me right there. That's the worst part of it. I could have kept that in my head. And
So okay, wait. So you're saying once the communist dictatorship took over, your parents fled.
That's when they fled to Sudan, and my parents didn't know each other until they were both in Sudan. But yeah, Eritrea, also the country right next to us, wanted its own independence. So there was like a three-way war, and my parents were in the border. They're from Tigray, which is the border between Eritrea, Ethiopia, and then also the civil war is happening, border wars happening, and it's like, all right, no one's gonna survive this.
Yeah. I mean, how much, do you know, what the Ethiopia your parents grew up in was like?
It was two different Ethiopias, because my mother grew up in a poor family. My dad was sort of like an aristocrat kind of family. So they have a different, like my dad has a bit of a, because he's the youngest, because his mother passed away when he was 3, and his dad, I think right before he was born. So he has sort of, but he was still raised by this whole family that's like, we're noble, while my mom's family is like, we can take care of shit. we are of the earth. We know how to do things. But they both saw enough things to be like their own, like, they can definitely tell you they'll tell you the most traumatizing stories of war and hardship with the most monotone, uncaring, unflinching voice. And you're like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw my friend die. He was without goats, and he see a landmine, he pick it up, it blow up, and I see him die in front of me. I'm like, yeah, maybe can you just like the first thing in the morning you're gonna tell me that story?
Like she's waking you up. Is that like PTSD, or is that just kind of like like emotional? Is there some kind of like emotional repression that's part of Ethiopian culture in some way? It is
very much so. It's the stoic. You have to remaining stoic, and regardless of what's going on, it's like hysteria is not it's happened a lot in my family, but once it's over, you just have to pretend like it never happened at all.
I think that's what made me want to talk to you in the first place. I don't know if you remember this at all. We were talking like maybe a year ago at a Good Heroin show, and you were talking kind of about the emotional repression in your childhood. And I was like, it ticked off whatever in my head. I'm like, oh, interesting. Because I also grew up in a kind of emotionally repressed household for very different reasons. But
it's still, you get there. It's the set. It's like we're not going to talk about this. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, what was, if you know, the Ethiopian culture of the that your parents grew up in, and I think more importantly, at least for this discussion, like how did that get into you, and like what parts of it are in you?
Well, the parts of it that are in me are just like when you repress emotions, you also acknowledge them on the way in. So I can. Like that's just like I know how I'm feeling, and I know how to process. Like even though it seems like I'm like, oh, I'm holding it back, I'm like, no, I'm actually taking a moment and not reacting to the entire feeling and being like, okay, let's process what we're feeling right now in my head. It's almost like I'm doing like a therapy session alone for a moment. Like we're just gonna talk about it's like the way my parents deal with it is. I'm not saying mine is healthy either. You should definitely let out your feelings when they come. Like when they show up, you should definitely express them. But yeah, it's just the way my parents do it. It's like it's like when they have like blow ups, it's spectacular. They are like because they bottle up everything so hard that eventually it's gonna need an outlet. So they're gonna end up like yelling at nothing. Like I wouldn't be surprised that with old age my parents would just be screaming at walls for like decades, because like that's what you get for holding back all those feelings.
Did you? For me, I know a lot of my repression just like figured other, like it wasn't always like emotional explosions, although there was a lot of rage in those days, a lot of like kicking waste paper baskets or something, but like it also would just like come, like it would just push itself out in different, like I'm not going to express the emotion, so it's just going to come out in like weird behavior.
Oh yeah. No, we were violent to each other, especially.
Oh,
oh yeah, there was a lot of violence in my home. That is the outburst. And it was like it was very much allowed, especially fights among siblings. Like my dad would square us off when we started getting in fights and make us do like wrestling matches in the living room.
So there was almost like a kind of like familial, like here's how we're gonna get out these emotions. So so there was like at least a way to.
Oh yeah, it was abuse. That's what we decided to do. Well, we all did it to each other.
I don't know what word I was going to use, but
abuse is the word because that's the only one that there is. I was also, because I had two younger brothers, so they were my outlet. So they would randomly. I just wouldn't even think about like it was like if I hit them, I hit them. It's fine. It's like so I just would randomly do it, and I also wouldn't let them walk in front of me on the way to school. That was my rule with my two younger brothers. And if they did, I would take my binder and aim it at their Achilles heel and just chuck it really hard, and they just drop right in front of me.
Okay.
And then I would just pick up my binder like I told you not to walk in front of me, just march on. I was like, oh God,
I was in my head a little bit because I was thinking about, I used to get in these like fist fights with my sister, my younger sister. She's like 3 years, a little more than 3 years younger than me. And when we were children, but there's a weird thing where I still kind of feel guilty over that now as an adult, and I don't know what to do with that feeling.
Oh yeah. It's because it's trauma, and like that's the thing. Is like every time we talk about it as siblings, like we joke about it, but at the same time, like we probably should be apologizing to each other because yeah, we were. It's that's the thing you'll never forget. Like and so you like, it's always good to feel bad. There's nothing wrong with feeling guilty. That means you're a good person because you cared that you did something bad in the past that you had no remorse for at the moment.
It would be nice to somehow, though, like as an adult, discharge this guilt that's somehow like weighing my brain down.
Oh, you can let her hit you back. You can just call him like, "Hey, you want a free punch?" And then
that's not bad. She asked Naomi and I to officiate her wedding, so maybe as part of the ceremony, there'll be a ceremonial punching.
It'd be hysterical. Like, at final vows, I do, and she just decks you with the ring finger.
to bring us back to healing.
Look, it's a clean slate after that, right?
Yeah. I want to believe so from this short discussion. But okay, so your parents, they meet in Sudan. They meet in Khartoum. Was that where?
Khartoum, yeah, they were in refuge at the time. My mom already had a few kids when she met my father. He was a bit of a drifter, which is just a homeless person on the go.
Like, what happens in the? I've talked to people who were. I talked to a man who was a refugee from the Hungarian Revolution.
Yeah.
Like his parents were very wealthy in the early part of the 1900s, had their wealth taken away by the Nazis, hid, made it through, and then there was a Hungarian Revolution. They had to like flee from that, and then they left all their stuff behind. Is that the same kind of thing that happened to your dad?
No, because his family lost everything before he can remember. So like it's like it wasn't really a thing of them like there's nothing for them to lose because it's like. The people that lost it passed away. His parents and his siblings sort of got that. Like they were pretty. Like when because in Sudan, in comparison to refuge, it's just an Ethiopian. It was a group of Ethiopians living outside of Khartoum. It wasn't really like a camp situation. It was like they had houses. They weren't beautiful houses. They were for sure gross. But it was It was. It's not. I don't think it was as it wasn't as bad as it still being in Ethiopia during the war. So
it wasn't like this kind of like fall from grace in some way. Like like his parents are already lost. So like I imagine every movie or something about like a nobleman who has now like fallen on hard times, and they're like, "Where's my servants?"
Because my dad was so young, though that didn't really play into it. They were both very much. My parents had sort of same mentality in regards to surviving, and it was more along the lines of surviving than it was about losing something and regaining something. I feel like every aspect of my childhood was like making sure you do things to protect the family and focusing on my mom especially was always like 10 steps ahead of everybody. Like she can save on a budget of almost nothing. Like she can still save money. And it's like, how do you do that? Like I can't do that at all. I know I've made twice as much as my mother from the moment I started working because of just the fact that I can speak English. And it's just, and I'm still not like, she just is capable of saving money, having 100 different plans, just ready to take care of everything. And you're like, yeah, I guess I can pay my rent this month and I still have that problem every once in a while. It's like, what are you doing?
So she kind of like through the process, I couldn't think of like what noun I wanted of being a refugee. She almost like had this like the thing like everyone says about like Obama was playing like 12th dimensional chess. She literally had to have like gain that kind of ability to see these like different paths. Like, okay, how am I going to just survive?
Mm-hmm. So the initial surviving, and then what steps you can do next to get out of it, and like signing up for refugees and getting asylum in the States, like all these things. Like she was the initiator. She knows how. Like my dad can communicate better. Like he's the face of the stuff that of our family. But my mom was the mastermind. She was the one that was like, "This is what we need to do next," and she will harp on everyone until it gets done. But everything she nags us about is literally for the best. Like there's nothing she's like, yes, like not tell me not to be gay was for sure rude, but she's like as a financial advisor, she's phenomenal.
So your family goes from Do you know your mom, you said your mom had children before she met your dad?
They're still my siblings technically. Like I don't consider them half because they're from my mother, and like I don't know life without them. So it's kind of like technically half, but who knows? Do you know what happened to their father? MIA during the war, and one of them another father was for sure dead. So my dad showed up. My mom was a widow. Well, according to her, she was a widow at the time because she didn't know about the other one. Because one of them was actually still alive, but my eldest brother was the one that had to go and find him. Because he was like, maybe. And she's like, he's dead. And he's like, no, I found him.
Yeah. I mean, the closest analog I can think of with like my family is like the Holocaust or something like that, where people just, you don't know what happened to them. And it wasn't like you could just like text them or something then. So it's just like, I
guess you're dead.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, maybe one day I'll find out you're not. But until then, it's kind of one of those things like, it's safe to assume.
Yeah. So then how do they go from Sudan to Missouri?
Oh, that is so you sign up for asylum, and once you get asylum, then you have to sort of have a sponsor to come to bring you over, especially for poor families. Usually through churches. I think a Lutheran church is the one that sort of sponsored us and brought us to St. Louis, Missouri. And when we showed up, we were like, for sure, we're glad we're here. Thank you so much. We're getting the fuck out of this. It's hysterical to me to have a family of people that were just like, yeah, we just lived in squalor in the middle of the desert, but you know what? Whatever this is, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here.
Was it just like, I mean, no offense to any listeners who live in the Midwest, but there's some like,
it was the weather. It was
the weather.
We showed up during a blizzard, and you cannot expect anyone who's spent generations in a hot summer area to be like, oh, this is okay. Like,
anytime I go into the Midwest, I'm acutely aware of being Jewish. Like anytime I'm away from a major metropolitan area, I'm like waiting for like the swastikas to come out.
Yeah, like I feel like you guys are judging me. It's really weird. I think it's probably, especially like Minnesota, is like the most polite racism I've ever seen. It's like, you're gonna say it, but you're not gonna be mean about it, which is really, I don't know if that's worse.
Oh, the casual, like the kind of just like it's just part part of the fabric of our existence.
Like I was in a lift, and this Somali woman cut us, like was driving badly in front of us, and the guy cut her off, and he just looks at me like, she's Somali. They're all bad drivers. They just got their licenses like 6 months ago. I was like, that's just a weird thing for you to just set up and throw at me like I'm going to fully be on board.
Yeah, what a weird, like, I'm trying to get your buy-in.
Like, look, I'll agree she's a terrible driver, but that has nothing to do.
I ever since I was a kid, I refused to pick up money on the ground. Because I'm so worried that someone's going to be like, oh, look at the Jew picking up the quarter.
Wow, that sucks. Ground money's the best money.
Like, look, I'll pick up paper money.
Yeah.
I'd be a fool to not pick up paper money.
Or do you kick it over around a corner and then
no, that I'm just like, well, I get weird about too. Any money stuff I get weird about just because of the history of like people being like, look at the cheap Jew or something like that. No one's ever said that to me in real life. It's just a thing in the back of my, again, a demon in the back of my head that's caged somewhere.
It's one of like, it's recent that I'm like okay with eating fried chicken in public settings. Like that is like a thing that I'm like, oh man, I can't just be licking my fingers in front of individuals. And now I'm at the point now I'm like, fuck y'all, I'm gonna eat my fried chicken anywhere. But that was like a real concern of mine. It's like, no, like you can't see me eat this.
Yeah. Who was saying there was another black comedian who was talking about like, I love watermelon and I can't eat it in public because of. And watermelon is objectively a delicious fruit.
Well, that's Dave Chappelle did that. Chris Rock had a bit about that. Just a few watermelon bits and not eat. Also, when it comes to sloppy fruits, that one is for sure. You can't look not silly eating watermelon. And
you got to cube it.
Yeah, and it's so yeah. If it's cubed and it requires a fork, I'll eat it in public. But yeah, if you give me a slice of watermelon in a park, I'm like, yeah, no, not today.
I'm not gonna. But also like. I cut up all my fruit, so I eat it all in private because it looks weird for me to cut up an orange into bite-sized pieces that I can eat with a fork.
Well, that's respectable.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you for saying that.
I have anyone doing anything unnecessary to eat. It makes me happy. I always take long, weird processes for eating. I'm a weird eater, and I like my favorite comfort food, and I do it maybe once every 3 months because it's very shameful, is boxed mac and cheese with tuna and a lot of hot sauce. And it is, nothing about it looks pleasant. Nothing about the smell of it smells good, but for me is like a delicacy. It's not like my mom ever made it for me. It was just one of the first things I put together myself, and I was like, I'm gonna eat this for the rest of my life, and I have, and it's gross, and I should stop. But
but there's a certain kind of like, because it was like one of the first things you made for yourself, you have somehow put some of your ego into it. So now every time you eat it, you return to that moment in some way.
Yeah, this is my recipe.
This is me. Yeah. I am existentially eating myself.
Yeah, this is a disgusting half-cooked tuna casserole that I made. But I fucking love it. I still do.
And since most of us are in some way narcissists, some shade or degree of narcissists, then there is some kind of enjoyment in that of the eating of like Christ, of eating of your own body.
This is my work. This is my art. I must consume it.
Wait, your family is Christian. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm looking at this Wikipedia article in my head, and I'm like, there were two kinds of Christian in Ethiopia.
There are. I'm only familiar with the one I grew up with, which is Orthodox, which is like the older church. And Ethiopia was arguably one of the first Christian nations. It's between Armenia and Ethiopia on who's first, and honestly, I don't care who wins that race. It's like, it doesn't matter. But yeah, Ethiopia it can be extra Christian sometimes. But that's also where they think they have the Ark of the Covenant there in one of the obelisks, and a bunch of monks that speak Coptic are the ones that protect it. So it's a very weird, Illuminati almost-esque.
When you're growing up, do you have, like, are your parents telling you this history? Because there is such a, not just Africa but Ethiopia specifically, it goes so far back. There's a kind of like, if you come from that area, I know, like, I can trace my mom's family back to one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And there's a certain kind of, like, even though we're diaspora Jews, I don't feel grounded here in America, there is a certain kind of, like, grounding I feel in history.
Yeah. Well, that's because, like, especially, like, for like my family too, our history goes back way, like, pretty far, especially through my dad's side because of where they stood in society. So it's like, yeah, we know how old our family is, how far back it goes. And also my parents were obsessed with all of their kids learning about Ethiopia. So if you just wrote Ethiopia on a piece of paper and charged my dad $5, he would have bought it. He was very much like, any piece of information he can obtain. So I think he got us like the same copy of National Geographics over and over again because it said it was one about Ethiopia. I'm like, Dad, you know this is the same one that you constantly purchase. I don't know how you're finding multiple copies of it. Congratulations. But yeah, he was, anything Ethiopia, education-wise, we were, like, we had to take classes after Sunday school sometimes. So that was a fun Sunday for me. Like, oh, Sunday school and then Ethiopian history. I'm like, what a great day.
So you were steeped in it as a child.
Mm-hmm. And we were allowed to speak English. We were barely allowed to speak English in the house. So.
Oh.
And also, I don't know how my parents do it, but there's Ethiopian tourism posters throughout our whole home. Which I'm like, did you steal it from a travel agent? This is not readily available at a market. Where did you get? And also, why are you promoting going to Ethiopia to a house of Ethiopians? We're on board.
In my head, I was like, they're at a travel agent, and your mom's distracting them while your dad is taking down posters from the wall.
So I'm thinking of going to Greece. Tell me about Mykonos. Oh, no. All right, we're going to go.
Are there certain concepts in Ethiopia that aren't in English? I mean, probably. I'm like, sometimes when I talk to people who are bilingual, there are things in one language, like an easy example is Schadenfreude in German, which, like, I mean, it's been taken into English now, but there are a lot of like German concepts that are specifically like if you're a German speaker, you understand them, and then it takes a little while to understand that concept in English. Are there certain things that are Ethiopian concepts that
I'm trying to think. Sarcasm is in Ethiopia is it's more it's like an elongate, like it's just you have to, it's almost theatrical. Like if you're being sarcastic, you have to make a production out of it, otherwise it doesn't read. So every time somebody's being sarcastic or condescending, it's really it hurts. It's really hurtful because they take their sweet time to get it over with. So it's almost like it's like when my parents are being condescending, they for sure are just like, you always look down on them, and then you just, so like, here's what I'm going to say about you. You're like, okay, I get it. Thank you. Like, I know. Thank you.
Oh, do you think that comes from the stoicism? Because you have to, I know like when I'm being very deadpan sarcastic with my parents, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I'm like, I was kidding. I was making a joke. And they're like, oh, you should, like, I said, like, should I have like a cigar like Groucho Marx that I can like kind of twirl so you get what I'm saying?
You have to do that with my parents. Deadpan sarcasm does not exist. Like, that is just like, you can't just say a false thing and be like, that was sarcasm. They're like, no, that was just you lying and trying to trick us. I'm like, no, it should be in a joke the whole time. I'm like, no. If it was a joke, you would have been theatrical about it. Like, okay. Like Ethiopian comedies, there's my parents love watching them. It's mostly people screaming, and it's mostly focusing on the fool character. That's pretty much all of them. There's always a character that's a fool, and he's always loud, and he's always obnoxious, and he's always getting in everybody else's way. And that's just most of Ethiopian comedy. It's just the concept of an idiot ruining everybody else's day.
It's I wrote a short, I was doing like a bit on stage. I'm not a stand-up, but sometimes if I'm asked to perform live, I like do I write short plays that I perform. And I did one about like a phone call with my parents where like I would say something like jokingly, and then there would just be silence for a long time, and my dad would be like, oh, is that real? And then I would have to be like, no, that's a joke. And it was basically almost verbatim a real phone call that I had with them one time. And then Naomi, after a while, Naomi's like, stop trying to joke with them. They do not get things unless it is again, kind of like that. If it's not like farcical in some major way.
But also I see that being funny for you. It's like, that'd be hilarious if my parents, like we poke it, like, they also, like, that's how we joke in my family. Like, we say things that our parents don't understand, and that's hysterical to us, because them not getting a concept is, like, whenever my parents don't get something, that's the hardest I'll ever laugh. Especially because they're both illiterate, they can't read, so whenever they miss, like my dad had his favorite shirt was a Three Stooges shirt, and it was a safe sex shirt, and they all had condoms on their heads. And obviously, he'd never used one before, so he had no idea what that was. So he owned the shirt for 2 years. It was his favorite shirt. And then one day somebody explains to him that it's a safe sex shirt and they're wearing condoms. And he came home and he was so upset. And he was like, you are my children. You're supposed to tell me. When and I just him, all the times he accidentally purchased non-alcoholic beer, also fucking hilarious. Like, I can't. Like, when my parents aren't in on the joke, those are the hardest times I laugh. Especially when it's their inability to read, which is, I guess, is sad, but it's hilarious when you're used to it.
It's hilarious from the inside.
Oh, from the inside, yes. Like, initially when people are like, oh, your parents were illiterate, I'm like, no. You get used to it, and then it's funny. After a while, it's hilarious. You can just write things, and they don't know what your stimulus says.
So wait, after Missouri, you go to
Fresno, California.
Fresno, right? Which is what, like
Central California. It is raisin capital of. I think there's another raisin capital. I'm going to throw that out just in case, because I believe somebody else corrected me that there's another city in California that's known as a raisin capital. But at the same time, I'm like, who gives a shit? Again, what are we competing for?
That's like Pennsylvania is like the pretzel capital And it's just like, who for who?
Like, take it away from us. No. We're good. Like, no one's going to rise to that challenge.
What or just like any like like is it bringing in tourism? Like what is the point of like labeling like where the raisin capital or where the pretzel, like Reading where I came from is they have a lot of their pretzels are very good, by the way. It's the best pretzels I've had in any city I've lived in.
I always love that about other cities. It's like, this is what we got going on and it's better than anywhere else. I'm like, that's great, but I'm okay with second place. I'm okay with third place. Honestly, I can have a fourth place pretzel and I'll be fine.
Is it like that if you don't have any personal achievements that you then take on the person, like it's like a sports team in some way, you're taking on I'm from the pretzel capital. I don't know, this is not a Pennsylvania accent or anything, but this character,
it's whenever anyone is like, especially like when I first came here from Seattle and I tried like Seattle had like great Vietnamese restaurants and amazing pho. So I showed up here and I was like, I have luckily I have other personality. I have a personality developed outside of my cities, but I still was like, what's going on with this LA pho scene? This is bullshit. I'm like, what kind of thing did you just say out loud? Or like, is anybody like somebody in New York coming to here and be like, there's no good bagels places? I'm like, yeah, because there doesn't need to be. There's so many other foods to choose from.
Wow. You do.
Look, you can just go back to New York to get a bagel, Andrew. You don't have to enjoy them here. That's the thing. It's like, I learned that if I find something good in a different city, I don't try to find it in another city.
Well, are you an adaptable person? I am such a, it's taken into my 30s for me to like kind of like loosen up a little bit and be like, it's okay, Andy. You're allowed to not have such a stick up your ass about everything.
It took me a while, and like it's like and living in Seattle for so long, like that was before moving here to LA. 16 years there, I think, made me a little more rigid on adaptability. But then now, like when I first moved here, overcoming that first year, and then that was also the time I started doing a bunch of out of town shows. So that was like, okay, now I'm back to where I was, where I'm like, I'm just in a different city. I'm going to do whatever is here and I'll be fine with it.
Yeah. How long did you stay in Fresno? Like, did part of your personality form there?
Oh yeah. We were there for 7 unholy years. No, there's a house in Fresno with a bunch of just check marks on on a headboard with California raisins, counting the days to get the fuck out of fucking Fresno. It is a hot, boring, meth addicted, crack addicted city, and it is like we were like getting out was like my priority, and my siblings were like, we love wherever we are, we have friends. I'm like, well, I don't have any friends. I can only focus on the city, and it sucks.
What like? Is it like, how big is it? Is it like you said, meth and crack? Like, is that everywhere, or is it just
no, it's just where we lived. But it is a big city, but it's not the part of the city where people are well off is gated. So you're like, there is some wealth in Fresno, but it's not letting you go. Like it is the most hysterical line of segregation you'll ever see. It's just this gated area in Fresno, and like in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that bad. But I'm never gonna go back to Fresno.
Yeah, like Reading wasn't bad at all, but I'm never going to go back there. Yeah. I was never near any of the like methy parts of it. And I know like my friend of mine, she's like, oh yeah, the house next door to us exploded because they had a meth lab at their basement. And I'm like, what? And that's like, half a mile from my home. So obviously there were like, but I was like a weird teetotal. I mean, I still am a weird teetotaler. So I never like anytime any kind of like, I was near any of that stuff, I was just like,
I was a snitch until I was like 19. So I was very much like, get away from me, you disgusting drug addicts. But now I'm a monster myself.
What changed? Like, I'm scared. Like, part of it's really just that I'm scared of drugs. Like, I don't have a problem with anyone doing whatever they want, but the idea of putting something unregulated into my body is so scary.
It is. It should be. But also regulation stuff is scary too. It's really everything is bad for you.
Yeah, I try not to do like, but with the exception of like, mozzarella sticks or something, I try not to put anything that could adversely affect me. Which maybe I've missed out on stuff though.
No, here's the thing: life is life. I don't think people need to do drugs, but I do think they're fun. And yeah, there's obviously lines of addiction. There's always problems, but you know what? At the end of the day, we're all gonna die. So do whatever you want and how you want to do it. If you don't want to do drugs, fucking don't. And if you do all of them.
What was the thing that like changed for you, where you went from like a snitch to like, oh, this is great?
Because it was right. It was like it was towards the end of high school, and I got the letter. I applied to Harvard, and I got rejected. And then I realized that the thing I worked up to wasn't the thing that I even wanted the whole time.
Oh.
'Cause I was like such an overachiever, and I had one goal in mind: doctor, lawyer, go to Harvard. And once I got that rejection letter, I was like, "Oh, I'm free." And then I was like, oh, wait, I also didn't want to do this. I never wanted to do this.
Oof.
So then the snitch guard just went down. I was like, and I started hanging out with my friends, and they were like, you want to go out and drink in the woods? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And I just did. And I just I slowly was like, sure, I'll check this out. I'll try. Man, I've never been one in like mass consumption of things. So it's like, yeah, I'll try things. I'll have a good time. I'll check out what 6 a.m. looks like. What have I got to lose?
Yeah, that like I lived in fear of my permanent record when I was a kid because I was such an overachiever, and I had it like in my like if I do anything, maybe it's also that I'm both scared of like putting foreign substances in my body and scared of like the repercussions on like in my school's permanent record. Like there could be something like that.
No, that's like if that's things like I think once the idea of me breaking from authority figures was the first move because I was for sure living up to my parents' expectations, and I was like, oh wait, I don't need to do that. And I was also the benefit of one of my younger brothers. He was anti-authority his whole life, and I think he's much smarter than me, but he was just like, I fucking hate school, I hate teachers, and I don't like what people tell me what to do. And it's like, okay.
I kind of wish I had been like that. I kind of wish I had been like, oh, I don't need this. I hate authority, and for someone that hates authority like me, you think I would have just been like, I'm going to be an autodidact. I'm going to read what I want to read, and I don't need a piece of paper that says that I'm smarty.
Yeah,
but I did need that for a long time.
As did I, and honestly, I like the way like me and my brother were both living the best version of our lives, and he was like, and it was mostly me coming to the point where it's like, oh yeah. It doesn't fucking matter. Yeah.
And I think what's interesting though, it took me a long time into my 20s I got kicked out of grad school, and that's the thing that kind of woke me up.
It's always something about school that fucking just a little like the second anything bad happens to us with our education, we're like, fuck you. I don't need you anyway.
It really was that. Then I moved to New York the next year to start doing comedy, which is what I had been doing on the side for years anyway.
See, I think you are a bit of a rebel if you're doing that then, Andrew. I'm sorry.
That's nice of you to say.
That's how it works. You got kicked out of grad school and went to New York to start doing comedy. That's the first chapter in a rebel's handbook.
But did you also like... I know for me there's a certain measure of religion in it. I wasn't like raised very religious. I mean... Well, we're Reformed Jews. Yeah. We went to temple like once a week and things like that. And I went to religious school, and I went to Hebrew school, and I had bar mitzvahs.
It sounds like you grew up religious.
But like I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember. Something I really don't give a shit, honestly. Something like I'm missing whatever that kind of feeling of faith is. Did you have faith when you were younger? I mean, how Christian were you guys?
Oh, like I was very Christian until I was like about 10, and then like once you get like a basic, especially between me and my younger siblings, we were very smart and we were very like science focused. So the great thing about science is that it eventually kind of helps you denounce certain beliefs. So like even though like I don't really consider myself an atheist because I'm happy with whatever happens when I die. It's I don't give a shit. I'm too lazy to say I'm an atheist is what I meant to say. I technically am, but I don't want to fight. But yeah, I think I was about 10 or 11, and we were like, I think we watched a special about the aquatic ape theory.
Yeah.
And we were like, this is cool. We'd rather believe in this instead of whatever anyone else believes. Or like, if we're going to believe in God, it's not going to be the God that we've been taught to believe our whole lives. And I also for sure lost faith because we kept going to an evangelical church called Truth Tabernacle.
Ooh, like real evangelical, like was it like Pentecostal kind of stuff, or was it
not like Pentecostals? Was like very like it was extreme, like people speaking tongues, jumping out of their seats. There was a stage. It was a 4-part stage that churned, so they can do different little scenes. It was a bit much, and I also was there with a school friend. She was in my Sunday schools as well. And she was so mean. I hated her guts. I hated her so much. And then one Sunday school, the Sunday school teacher was like, well, one of your fellow students was given the gift of tongues. And it's Dora, which is my friend. It's the girl. I was like, no, God's not real. If he's speaking to her, he's not real. I'm out. And then you just watch, and then once that illusion breaks and you see, and then now you're watching people just speak gibberish for the first time. You're like,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there was almost like this kind of like paradigm shift in your head. Oh, I was about to say crazy. That's not even crazy. I don't have an adjective. Interesting.
It's because it's just an unveiling. It's, see, like, it's one of those things, a thing that you learn with drugs too is that you can see things for what they are sometimes, and sometimes the world gets really ugly, and then you're like, okay, I made something beautiful that didn't need to be beautiful, and I need to be realistic sometimes. I did fit that out on Molly once.
I say this way too much on the show, but I'm very interested in psychedelics in just the sense of like, is there something that'll fucking give me some kind of peace around the idea of dying?
No.
Oh, great. I've heard that psychedelics in some way help.
They buffer out. It gets rid of the idea of the fear. Like, it tampers down like the fears you have when you think of dying. And I'm definitely a lot more calmer, like on plane takeoffs. But yeah, psychedelics, like, they're fun and they're revealing, but also they're very exhausting. Especially like I've done acid a few times, and that one I'm done with because it's like 16 hours of being high, and you're just like, if you show me another fucking color, I swear to God, like, universe, I don't need you to speak to me right now. I really just want to go to bed.
Was there a similar kind of consciousness change once you started doing drugs? Was there a certain kind of, in the same way that like when you lost that when you I like the word used, unveiling through of losing that faith.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you guys are just speaking gibberish. Was there any kind of similar consciousness changing when you started doing drugs or through the use of drugs?
Well, through drug use, you just kind of you're more accepting of what life does, and you also, it's more along the lines of enjoying moments, which we can't. We just become like, being in the moment is way more difficult as an adult. Like, we're constantly like moving and doing like, oh, this is, I focus on this, I'm focusing on that. And then drugs are just like, well, here you are in this moment and only this moment. And you're like, cool. And so it's like, it's just like the feeling of euphoria just sort of just puts you in one spot, and then you just get to, it almost, like, I feel like we disassociate from ourselves for most of the day. And then like every once in a while we're like, oh, that's who I am. Like when we walk by a mirror or something, like, but drugs are just like, no, we're here. You're you this whole time. Feel everything. Look at everything. Touch stuff.
So
but it also can be, I can also see how that's overwhelming too.
Yeah. Very much so. So wait, at around age 10, you kind of lose some kind of faith. So is that almost like the first pillar of repression kind of falling away?
Oh yeah, that's like, that was definitely the beginning of the end for my parents and their future goals for me.
When do you come out?
I came out when I was 18.
18.
So like when I decided not to go to school, move out of my parents' house, and tell them I was gay, I did it all in one day.
Oh, okay. So because I was trying to track in my mind, I'm like, oh, what's the process of like all of this, all like who you are as a person actually emerging from the repression.
Yeah, it's because it was mostly because I was so afraid of taking risks, and I was just learning that those are fine, and I started taking more and more of them, and I was like, oh, you can still live a good life and not have to play by these dumb rules. And now I don't have to play by those dumb rules, and I'm going to keep... It's like I have no choice now.
Yeah, there is this weird... But did you also become frustrated? Once I learned that the rules that I was taught that exist in such a solid way... Mm-hmm. Don't actually exist, and it's like your choice whether you want to follow them, and all of our choices whether you want. Yeah. Now, then I started to live in like a state of like frustration.
Well, that depends, because like you have to. It's almost like I realize that I'm making a choice to do what I'm doing. Like there are things that I feel like the choice like if I'm like there are things like yeah, for sure I feel like the choice is made for me, but in the grand scheme of things. I'm pretty good. I don't live in a locked basement. I have ample food. It's one of those things. That's one aspect of my childhood that I do enjoy, is that my parents constantly make us understand that things can be significantly worse. It's like, oh, you think this is a problem? Well, when I was your age, I'm like, okay, we're good. We don't need to.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up constantly with the specter of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Like I learned about it way too young. Like I want to say when I was 6, but I think maybe it was like maybe 3rd grade.
That's probably the first time you remembered, but I'm pretty sure that you were probably taught. Like my parents did not hold back on anything traumatic wise. It's just like, we're going to tell you, like, death is going to be. It's going to have a starring role in the stories we're going to tell you. It's one of those things where, yeah, it's like, well, this is not the worst thing that can happen to me. I was born in a refugee camp, and we had to flee from where we're going and it's just one of those things like, yeah.
Does that framing stick with you?
Oh yeah, it does, because there's no way you can get your parents' voice out of your head.
I've been trying. Therapy is a way of doing it, but it's I still have the super ego. Mm-hmm. I still have that kind of voice. Both my parents and cultural. Yeah. Like a lot of the cultural stuff is like, you're not manly enough. Like that kind of like.
Oh yeah, I hate that one.
I despise that voice. I'm like, why can't I just do what I want to do?
Yeah, it's like, you're not macho enough for this. I'm like, why do I have to be? That one I'm slowly learning over time, because I was very, very, like, even when I came out, I was still like, I'm into men and only men. Like, what the fuck kind of person is that? So yeah, it took me like a while to be okay with not being overtly masculine and like presenting as straight, and because that was like such a big deal when I first came out, and I'm like, I don't know why I want to present as straight. That is literally not how you get laid. Like, no one in this place knows I'm gay. It sucks.
How did your parents respond through this whole process, starting at 10 all the way up through 18?
Not well. Like I was not like I had little protests here and there, but I was very much, I still followed the rules up until a certain point, right when, like in my later teens. But for the most part, they were like, shut it down whenever they got, like, they did not like any, like, you could not question anything, and even regardless of how stupid their point was, it's always was right. So it's like, it's they definitely made me feel stupid, even though I knew I was smarter than them. So I learned it from them.
Were there like moments of rebellion, like in that 8 years? Were there moments of rebellion to?
Yeah, I ran away when I was 17 for a few months. And to LA
for a few months.
5 months, yeah.
Wait, do you mind if I like? What happened? Like, how did you?
Oh, I just didn't want. Like, I planned it for like almost like 6 months before I did it. But yeah, no, I was like, I'm gonna run away and go be famous, because I was 17. I was like, so famous is just whatever. Like, just like I thought, I show up to LA, get discovered, and I just did not like. I was like, it was also like my first step in coming out, like be in LA, become successful, then come out, like the way most actors do.
But wait, what, how did you, why was that because that seems like an extreme form of rebellion to me. Mm-hmm. Like, how did you get that notion in your head that that's what was that's what you weren't going to wait until you were 18 to leave the home. You were going to like, no, I got to go now.
Like, especially at that time, like everything is so immediate that it's like, if I don't live the life I want to live, then I'll be stuck here forever. And so, especially when you're a closeted gay person, you're like, I will never get to be who I am forever, or do I just get up and go? And it's like a constant question that I had every single day, and it just one day just made sense. I was like, yeah, just plan this. You're old enough. You can figure things out. You're a smart kid. Take the risk.
I mean, does that question start as like a low hum earlier in your life, and then it just starts building until it's deafening?
Oh yeah, that's like, yeah. Ever since the idea of me leaving my parents' house and being on my own, like it's like, yeah, it's been in the forefront. Like, yeah, I don't want to live under these rules. I don't want to impress anyone anymore. I don't want to have to go to school, like, and I don't want to do like when you have so many obligations to yourself, you eventually are going to crack. So me breaking away was for me to run away. So it was the best. It was a great time too. Like, I was so free. I don't think I've ever been that free since. Because like when you run away as a teenager, then you're like, this really, the world wants to take care of you in some aspects. Especially for me, because I was just like, I don't know about me. There was something about me when I was 17 that was charming enough that people wanted to take care of me as a stranger, but didn't want to murder me, which was very nice.
They had boundaries.
Yeah, it was great. It's like, I'm like, I was kind of, I hitchhiked several times and no one ever murdered me. So I was either too sweet to murder or too annoying. Who knows? But,
so you went to LA for 5. Did your parents know? Like, did you leave a note, or did you just like take off?
They're already. Yeah, you don't need them.
Well, your brother, your siblings.
My brother was gonna read it, yes. But if leaving a note, I did leave a note. But they were the ones that went in my room first. So yeah, I pretty much left a piece of garbage on my bed for them. And it took my brothers read the note like a month later.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
So what led you eventually back to Seattle?
Oh, I was in a shelter at the end of it. I was institutionalized a couple times because I was having really bad anxiety attacks. And then the second time I was like, all right, I guess I'll go back home. And then my dad came down and picked me up and we left. And it was good for it was like, oh, they're like soft gloving me for a couple of weeks. And then it went right back to when all the stuff when you were 18 and you kind of and everything came out at once. Yeah. Did that offer a moment of honesty, like between you and your parents? Like, was that a moment? Like, I'm trying to think of and this is, I mean, on the spectrum of like emotional turbulence. Like, I'm over on the lower end, so I'm not trying to like compare us, but I'm just trying to think of like empathize and think of like what in my life is analogous in some way. It's just like some of like not doing the stuff that I definitely think around career things, they wanted a lawyer or a doctor and they want grandchildren. Yeah. And I'm never going to give them any of that stuff. And it's just, and that's always going to be this kind of thing that's between us. Yeah, that's always with me. Yeah.
Was there ever a moment though where some people like eventually like their parents come to some kind of I don't even know what the word is, their peace with
it's one of those things where I just I got to the place where I didn't care if they were accepting of things.
Oh,
that's 'cause that was my biggest fuck you to authority, was not caring how my parents think of me and how I behave or what I do with my life. Like that was like the first shot in the air for me. Like I was like, oh, because I did all that stuff. I was like, yeah, and no, this is who I am, and you have to deal with it, and then I'm done. So,
this would just be the last question then. Like, how did you get to that point? Because I think that's a really wonderful place to get to. I'm not there yet, and with my like lower end spectrum shit.
Well, it took a lot of narcissism, a dash of selfishness, and it was generally like we have this whole concept of happiness and contentment in life, and those things come with risks, and those risks are you doing stuff that benefit you. So it was one of those things where it's like, what do I want to do in my life? Do I want to make my parents happy, or do I want to make myself happy? Mm-hmm. And like once that like clear line was made, I was like, I'm gonna go and choose my happiness. Like I love my parents, but their happiness isn't my responsibility. Mine is. So like I can never do anything to make them genuinely happy. But like, and that's the thing. Like you can only do so much for other people.
Yeah.
And if they're willing, but you can definitely make yourself happy if you choose to. So it's like, it's really like, I know I have better control over one of those two things. I have better control over my own happiness than the happiness of others. So as long as I'm not being mean to anyone, who gives a shit? Like I'm going to try to make myself happy. And if I don't make you happy, I can't do much other than that. Like, it's like, I'll try my best to make you happy, but if I don't, then sorry, dog.
That actually seems like a very nice place to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really glad we could talk like this. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.